All right. I think we left off with indirect discoverers. Is that where we are? Cool. Did you guys have any questions here? Everybody's good? All right, fantastic. So let's look at the rise of European exploration. It goes all the way to Marco Polo, and that was a great response to my Marco Polo. Good job. So we all play that game because Marco Polo, with a group of explorers, traders, are going to go from Venice to China, and they will explore India, interact and live among the Mongolian people. I don't know if anybody watches the Marco Polo series on Netflix. Pretty good. It's pretty hardcore. There's definitely some historical liberties taken with the series for entertainment purposes. It's a little gory, a little over the top. Definitely some very risque material there. Polo is going to return from a 20-year journey. He'll write a memoir, autobiography, similar to what you will be producing very soon. And this autobiography memoir of his travels, experiences, will inspire explorers to go into the unknown to find a faster trade route. I thought we did a really good job of bringing that up earlier. The importance of that trade route is going to, whether it be a southwest trade route to Asia and India or a northwest route, is going to be the reason that explorers risk everything. Some of those explorers that are inspired by Polo will be Prince Henry the Navigator. He was a Portuguese mariner and connected to the royal family in Portugal. His school for exploration and mariners will be established at Sagres, Portugal. It's on my bucket list. I'd like to visit Portugal at some point in my life, as well as Spain, and check out the site where this early school of exploration began. Kind of weird. It's one of the earliest lessons I remember learning about this lesson in my second grade teacher's class. I don't know why. She taught these lessons on ancient history, and I remember that. Weird. So, a little bit about the School for Exploration. It was mainly a school for the Portuguese. There were Spanish explorers and mariners that attended, Italian explorers and mariners that attended. There were advancements in technologies here, technologies that had been invented in China, like compass and the caravel, and rudder technologies and sail technologies were improved upon at this School of Exploration. So the Portuguese began to take the lead in Atlantic exploration, mostly off the coast of Africa. So one explorer in particular is Bartholomew Diaz. He's going to be the first to round the Cape of Good Hope. Another thing that we're going to see too that's very tragic from this era is that West African exploration for trade goods and along the Gold Coast is also going to lead to the beginning of the slave trade. The Portuguese don't like that they're the ones tagged with starting the transatlantic or the European slave trade, but the oldest slave trade can be traced to them in West Africa. Obviously, the Spanish, the Dutch, the English, the French, they get on the scene for the slave trade not too far after. Columbus will appeal to numerous nations for exploration. On his second attempt to Spain, he will be hired by Isabella and Ferdinand. They looked at it being far more of a reward than a risk to grant Columbus this opportunity. He does have some stipulations, like, anybody have any idea how much percentage he'll get if he is successful? Okay, 50 is generous, 20 is more accurate. Less than 20. Less than 15. About 10%. But that's a lot of money off of everything that he finds. Plus, he's going to get we talked earlier, Mallory brought up glory, I believe, and it talked about the titles. He's going to get that admiralty title as well. And then we have Portuguese explorer Vasco da Gama. He becomes the first European to reach India around the Cape of Good Hope. But this is a very long and dangerous journey along West Africa and East Africa. But making the turn around both South Africa and South America, the Cape of Good Hope and Cape Horn, are dangerous for any mariner. This is not just due to the weather, but also the tidal changes. So we have Marco Polo and his route from Italy through the Mediterranean, India, Indonesia, China. Prince Henry the Navigator, and then there's the School for Exploration and Navigation. Question?
I've always wondered when the explorers went on land and then they went to sea, did they carry their own boat with them, or did they hitch rides?
That's an awesome question. They typically paid for the services of other mariners. Like Polo and his uncle and father and their whole crew, they traveled by foot, they traveled by horse, they traveled by camel, they traveled by boat, any way that, and they typically had to pay their way along the way. Polo and most Italian merchants, though, they had a diverse skill set, so they were pretty familiar with, they were seafaring people, so they knew their way around a boat. Chances are, like for him and most explorers taking that kind of a trek, they would have had to pay for passage. It's a good question. All right, there's Prince Henry the Navigator. Here we have Bartholomew Dias, or Diaz, on the West Africa exploration route and the Cape of Good Hope along South Africa. Columbus, we have his 4 routes mapped here. His first route, he lands in present-day San Salvador, comes across the Arawak native people who he believes to be Indios. He believes he's in the West Indies, hence their name, the name Indians are given to Native Americans. Travels along Cuba through Hispaniola and present-day Cuba and Hispaniola back to Spain. He'll take 3 additional trips, and I think it's important that we look at the 3rd and 4th trip, because you see in green and white, Columbus has explored a significant amount of Mexico, Central America, and South America on the 3rd and 4th journey. And I'm going to bring that up when we get to the next part of the lesson. And then we've got Vasco da Gama and his route around the Cape of Good Hope in 1497 and into the Indian Ocean and India in 1498. There is another Italian explorer that's exploring at this time for the English. His name is John Cabot, Giovanni Caboto, and we're going to talk more about him in lesson number 2. All right, so what are those motives? You guys did a really great job with that driving question today, that discussion question of what the motives were. Improvements in technology, the invention of the gunpowder. Where do we get gunpowder from? What civilization? Yeah, the Chinese. Good job. What other group of people were using gunpowder in weapons technology? Yeah, good job. Muslims in the Middle East. Excellent job. So we've got one of the earliest Spanish guns is the harquebus or arquebus, the compass, Chinese, the caravel, Chinese and European, the astrolabe, Chinese and European, and it was perfected upon by the Europeans. Printing press, Gutenberg, in 1450. Religious conflict, Crusades, which I'm sure you covered over the last couple years. I would imagine that the Renaissance and Marco Polo and the Crusades overlapped in World I and World II. So you have religious conflict between the Christians and Islam, but it's also bigger than that. We talked a little bit about that earlier, where you have the rise of the power of the Roman Catholic Church, the Protestant Reformation led by Martin Luther, an additional Protestant Reformation led by John Calvin, an additional Protestant Reformation led by Henry VIII, and those religions are going to those Christian religions and new denominations are splinter groups, and they will want to go out and spread their word and their culture and their message into the New World. Expansion of trade, the trade goods of Africa, the gold from Africa, sadly the slavery from Africa, the cotton and spices and trade goods from India, and the spices and trade goods from China, as a result of the travels of Polo and the Crusades, are going to inspire explorers and settlers to go out into the Atlantic looking for a southwest and northwest trade route. Another important point that I think needs to be addressed is the trade route through Constantinople being shut down to overland trade on the Silk Road is going to increase the prices of goods along the way. So remember, once goods reach a number of different middlemen along the Silk Road, spices become worth their weight in gold. And European nations want to find a faster way to get those trade goods. Developing nation states, we did a great job of bringing that up earlier. European monarchies are in competition. Ironically, many of these monarchies are intermarried and intermingled. A lot of these people, their family trees don't appear to have a ton of branches because a lot of the monarchs are related and had been in arranged marriages for alliances. So England, Spain, France, and Portugal are in constant competition to strengthen their empire, gain more land, gain more resources, gain more wealth, gain more power. It's very difficult to find a war that has ever been fought that did not involve or include religion, money, land, empire building, and the growth of that empire. Some of these Far East trade goods that I wanted to mention: gold and precious jewels from Africa and China, diamonds in particular. In Africa, we'll talk more about the African diamond mines later. I'll get to you in 1 second, Nick. Gunpowder from China, that's the Spanish harquebus that I was talking about. You're going to see that. I'm going to show you a clip of that being fired off. It almost looks like a horn with a trigger. Cinnamon from Ceylon, pepper, nutmeg and cloves from India and Indonesia, silks from Japan, cotton and dye from India. Yeah, it's a faster moving set of sails it's a type of ship with larger sails and a faster, well, it's a combination. Caravel had large sails that provided with a better rudder system so they could travel at a faster speed. Yeah. All right. Did you guys have any questions about those trade goods? All right, let's talk a little bit about Columbus. Only got a few more things I want to hit on here. Columbus's crew will set sail in August of 1492 aboard 3 ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, which will be his flagship. This is like a typical Columbus way of doing things. There was a near mutiny not far from the Caribbean. So he said, if one of my sailors sees land, I will grant you a title and I will give you a monetary reward. One of his deckhands, by the name of Rodrigo, did see land, but Columbus claimed that he saw it first, didn't give the guy the title, didn't give him the monetary reward. That's pretty common when it came to Columbus's system of conquest. Columbus and his crew will land in present-day San Salvador, October 12th, 1492. Again, he narrowly escapes a full mutiny by his crew. The group that he will first interact with will be the Arawak, and then the other tribe will be the Taino. He will dub these people Indios. Some of them will return back with him on his voyage back to Spain. On his return voyage, he finds that the forts that were set up are now gone and the local natives have killed his crew, so all-out war and genocide will be waged on the Arawak and the Taino in that region, and those tribes, due to warfare and disease, will no longer exist. Columbus also, he and his crew, had a pretty brutal strategy for labor. They had a quota system, whether it be for gold, silver, or whatever they were trying to extract in terms of resources, where if the natives didn't work fast enough or get enough material, they could be executed, they were typically crucified, or they could lose limbs for not working fast enough and producing enough.
How do you spell Taino?
Taino, T-I-A-N-O. No, T-A-I-N-O. Taino. T-A-I-N-O. All right. So, again, as I previously mentioned, Columbus is spreading the Christian faith and missionaries are coming over, but he's far more consumed with the idea of getting gold and silver for the crown. 3 additional voyages after the first. And what I want to do is take a look at a couple of primary documents here. Remember, the system for trade between, thank you much, the system for trade between the Old World and the New World is known as the Columbian Exchange. The Americas, though, will get their name from Amerigo Vespucci. So we've got a painting of Columbus claiming the land in honor of Spain. But what I want everybody to do is take a look at this coat of arms. This is Columbus's coat of arms. What does this represent here? Good. The crown and the church. Very good. Crown and religion. What does that represent? Very good. Admiralty of the sea. And then this, what does this represent? Land. So we know that Columbus, just by looking at his coat of arms, he knows that he landed somewhere larger than just the West Indies by the looks of his coat of arms. And then we have Amerigo Vespucci and his routes. And you can see why Sebastian Münster was able to draw more detailed maps after the exploration of Vespucci. And remember, the German cartographers give the Western Hemisphere the name the Americas. This is my last note for today. The Columbian Exchange here, just some of the goods that are coming from the New World to the Old World and from Africa. Minerals like gold and silver. Agricultural goods like corn, potatoes, pineapples, tomatoes, tobacco, beans, vanilla, and chocolate. Disease, syphilis. Okay, I know this is an awkward conversation. It's a sexually transmitted disease. But it's not, it's a bit controversial because there are strands of syphilis that date back to the ancient Greeks, but syphilis was off the scene for a while. It comes back around during the age of exploration. So the Spanish and the Portuguese blame the French. That's what that translates to, the French disease, syphilis. Okay? But we know that this disease was likely contracted by, okay, y'all can, I appreciate that. All right?
I love that one.
It's good. So, likely contracted by having relations with native people. There is going to be a syphilis outbreak during this era. It was deadly. There's no penicillin, guys. There's no antibiotics to knock out the syphilis at this time. So keep that in mind. All right. Agriculture from the Old World, from Europe and Eurasia. Wheat, sugarcane, rice, coffee. Livestock, horses, cows, pigs, for not only domestication and drafting, but also for consumption. Consumption. And in very hard times, consumption. Yeah. Diseases, the big one was smallpox. This was the most devastating. But measles, plague, influenza was a tough one. Typhus, diphtheria, scarlet fever, later yellow fever. African contributions, trade goods, tools, musical instruments, gold, and sadly, slave labor. And at some points, indentured servitude. Yes? Well, chickens are going to make their way over as well. But chickens are going to be in Europe and in Asia. Does that make sense? Yeah, I should have said chickens as well.
The first person finding a chicken, what is that?
I believe chickens are on the... All right. So, this is the... We'll leave it here. Turkeys from the New World, chickens from the Old World. No, chickens were coming over from... Chickens were in Asia, Eurasia, and Europe. All right. This is a handy-dandy Columbian Exchange map for you. This is where I pump the brakes on our lesson. Do you guys have any questions?